Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. Before we begin with Kris's unparalleled metaphysical content, I know that many of you watching have felt a sense of being ungrounded, unhinged, or out of balance in these times. I know. I've felt this way too. Kris's teachings have similarities to popular ideas such as the law of attraction and the secret. The difference is that Kris's knowledge goes even deeper into reality creation and helps resolve many of the problems identified with the law of attraction. The information he shares helps restore grounding and that sense of balance that many of us have lost in these times. If you're ready for the law of attraction and secret 2.0 and want to be a part of this fantastic community, then hit that like button, subscribe, drop a comment below, and press the bell icon so that you get notified when Kris releases cool, new metaphysical content. Kris also offers life-changing online seminars, private sessions, and mentoring sessions, which are all linked in the description below. Glad you're here with us, and let's jump into it. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. And today we are having another one of our group sessions where I believe a number of us are going to be interacting with Kris and perhaps asking questions. And I think today we'll forego the introductions. I think all of us have been on this call before, and Kris is already here with us. So, welcome.
Indeed, and we trust that you are all comfortable, windy or not. And we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you as well, Kris.
Please feel free if someone has an inquiry or an observation. Everyone is looking at you right in the middle square.
Well, Kris, I think all of our middle squares might be a little different, so
So please feel free.
well, I'll go first then. And perhaps I know some of the other panelists haven't seen the the video we're going to release on imaginary friends, and particularly about the use of imagination in children. Um, but I was wondering, perhaps uh, if you could tell us a little bit more about some of the, I guess, impacts we're seeing, or how I think a lot of people are have encouraged their children to kind of shut down that way of looking at things, or that imaginative process. And I have to imagine that has had impacts on our society and culture and civilization, and things that we're seeing in mass. And I'm wondering about some of the links there, if you could go into that.
Indeed. So when the process of shutting down the imagination is instilled in young children, for whatever reason, it begins to incorporate the idea that there are things going on inside you that might not be trustworthy. You might not want to trust your imagination, lest it get the better of you. Your imagination is too wild. Your imagination is not real, and so on and so forth. So when that process begins, the child will curtail their use of the imagination and learn, first of all, to not talk about it, because talking about it brings a reproach, brings criticism, brings opinions, and that is not necessary. And as the child grows and is encouraged to literally engross themselves in the things of the world, as something worthy of pursuit, whilst the imagination is not. You effectively begin shutting down that genius side of the child. All children have unimaginable genius. They look at the adults, they formulate how to speak. They find their own way to go from crawling to walking to running and then driving. The use of the imagination, in spite of its bad rap, is what makes your reality, your civilization, what it is. It makes any civilization what it is. Without the use of that imagination, you cannot build a society, a nation, nor a family, nor understand certain principles and values. And when that happens, then indeed you do not fulfill your own potential. And the potential of each child is enormous if only that child is allowed to use its imagination. So it is a primary foundational principle of your reality. Again, without the imagination, you would not even be able to put together a bird cage because you would have no spatial relations. You would not be able to formulate all of the mathematical equations that give you insights into the physics of the physical reality that you inhabit. That requires imagination. Everything that you do, you imagine, you see in your mind's eye in one form or another. So it becomes very, very important. And were it cultured or cultivated appropriately, your civilization would literally experience quantum leaps in development. Right now, it is still held back, your civilization, by antiquated ideas about the nature of the self and spiritual realities. You are effectively hampered, you are hobbled spiritually. This has nothing to do with religion. There's another topic altogether. But spiritually, you are hampered. You do not trust yourself. You prefer to criticize yourselves at every turn. How could you possibly conceive of the idea of self approval when you cannot even trust yourself? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and I'm following you, and it's really interesting. You mentioned you when this is getting shut down of kind of not speaking or perhaps gathering fears. And I was doing some writing recently, and I was exploring this idea of the subconscious of doom, in that a lot of these things get kind of piled away, and then later on in life kind of come back as sort of fears, and to face them, and then to sort of reopen the imagination and to let that expand. And so I thought that was interesting.
Indeed. Even later on in life, you also need the use of your lovely imagination to move forward. You might have been in a pattern or a rut, or you would call it a holding pattern, with your work, with your family, with your life. You come at a certain stage in life where you need something to break through the walls of your own fortress that keep you locked in to certain behaviors and patterns. Your own energy seems to dry up. You need a new source of life. It is within you, but if you cannot even consider the possibility of imagining what else you might be able to do in life, then indeed you face certain kinds of struggles. And some of these struggles are very real indeed. Does that also make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one of those particular struggles is being able to conceive of yourselves as an fully legitimate, self approved individual. You do not approve of yourself. Therefore, you would also project that and do not approve of others. In other words, your human capacity for self judgment sometimes goes through the roof, and you project that onto others. And this, interestingly enough, can also be observed with certain groups and individuals who are inclined towards fundamentalist right wing religious belief structures. They want everybody else to follow the rules. They feel exempt of following them themselves because they cannot conceive of themselves as anything else but someone who will always be criticized by their supernatural deity. Does that also make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, what do you do with a fertile imagination?
You create a computer, you create a cell phone, you create automobiles, you create art, you create music. There's all sorts of things that you do with a fertile imagination.
Indeed, you go to the moon. You plan trips to Mars. You plan to terraform other planets. You go to the bottoms of the ocean and discover the world that you have. You build nations and cultures and civilizations. And your species has been doing that for an unlimited number of years. Not just thousands of years, but literally millions of years. You do that because you get ideas. The ideas populate your mind with all sorts of possibilities. What would happen if we do this and we do that and that other thing? What would we become? This is all in the rich bed of the imagination. And that comes complete with the feelings and the emotions and all the tools necessary to build what you have. Does that also make sense to you?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, Kris, as you were talking there, it was making me think, I'm doing writing a novel right now, and it was making me think that like the characters, the psychic space chihuahua and the rocking rhino and the different characters, they're like the adult version of my imaginary friends.
In many respects, indeed. In fact, without the use of the imagination and often many, many imaginary friends, your world of art and literature would have withered away on the branch of life a long time ago. So it sparks life within you, and that is what the imagination does, and so much more. Your scientists, for instance, are contemplating the possibility that there are many parallel worlds. Other scientists are contemplating the very real possibility that there is consciousness even in inanimate objects. Of course, it would have to be because you use your imagination. The imagination itself is the very part of consciousness that explores itself. You are who you are because you are able to imagine yourselves as you are. Does it not make sense then that you need your internal companion, the imagination, to be who you are, which also brings up the idea that as a result of being able to imagine who you are, you therefore are more than just a clump of proteins and algae. You are living force, three-dimensionalized as yourselves. And of course, we mean no disrespect to algae. Without it, you would also have a lack of oxygen. Please feel free to continue.
So, Kris, for those individuals, adults that are maybe beginning to explore themselves in various ways, what are some nice ways to help us rekindle that connection and the way that we can use the imagination to free up our life, to do things with our life that maybe we, quote unquote, haven't imagined yet?
Indeed. An excellent area to begin in is revisiting what you did as a child when your imagination had not been hobbled. What kind of games as children did you use to play? What kind of stories did you use to tell as a child? What kind of games did you use to play? In some cultures, the little girls often will serve tea and cookies, all imaginary, of course, to their imaginary guests. Little boys might play soldiers and other games with their imaginary friends or their physical friends and share stories. So, revisiting some of these aspects of your youth would be an excellent place to start. And from there, perhaps even if you might encounter those particular moments when you were strongly suggested to curb your imagination, and instead of doing that, become an imaginary rebel with a cause. And that cause is to rekindle some aspects of your life. Bring back those embers into fires. Perhaps as a child, you might have had an interest in animals, perhaps even want to be a veterinarian or a doctor. What happened that you stopped doing that? Where did you branch off into something else? Does that desire come back? And what do you do with it? Do you just keep telling yourself, oh, that is a silly idea, perhaps even a stupid idea? As we have mentioned before, there are many, many adults who come to a crossroads, especially in their mid to late 30s, even into their mid to late 40s, where they have to literally question almost everything about their lives. Some never do, but some do. And if you are one such individual, what kind of desires come up, say, for a next step of your life? Do you revisit certain dreams you had as a child? Again, perhaps you want to be a veterinarian, or perhaps you want to be a therapist, or perhaps you want to be something else, a musician, perhaps, or perhaps a writer. So all of these things are worth revisiting and literally being brought back on the table so that you can see what are the possibilities of pursuing perhaps a dream that you thought had expired a long time ago as a child, but now you suddenly have a rekindled interest in trying to pursue that, to investigate it, to study, to bring about a completely different life for yourself. And all of these are worth investigation. You might have 3 or 4 different ideas to pursue, but if you do not look at any one of them, none of them will matter. But if you look at one of them, you might look at another and another, and then perhaps decide this one is the strongest, it resonates the strongest with me. I will begin to take the preliminary steps to investigate how I can make that dream come to reality, even if it is later in life. Many people later in life become artists or writers and suddenly find themselves fulfilled in ways they had never imagined. So it is well worth revisiting some of these issues. Do you follow?
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like something that's very worthwhile to begin.
Indeed, it is.
Another way of finding which you are, which me am I, which me, which world.
What kind of you is waiting for you down the road?
Yeah.
You will never find out if you never journey forward. So all of these adventures in life are literally an inspiration from your future. And again, it is well worth taking the bait. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And one of the things that pops into my mind is that, a number of individuals, they are hesitant to move into some of those things because of all sorts of things that they think may stop them from doing that, the reaction they may get from friends or family, or whatever. And along the line with the theme tonight, what they're not understanding is that really what they're doing is they're imagining all those responses and reactions. And they're showing up
Indeed.
in their life as a result of what they're imagining.
They are utilizing the process of creativity to not be creative.
Or to be creative in a way that's not too fun.
Hmm.
I think it can bring up something that you talked about a year or so ago when you said we we tend to allow ourselves to believe what other people have told us we are, who other people have told us that we are, and trying to live up to other people's ideas and expectations of who we are.
Indeed.
And so searching for, your own fulfillment, your own creative outlet or expression, those things come
There
up.
does come a time in everyone's life where you have to determine how long have you been living up to what other people have told you to be, and when will you decide that your own opinions about yourself are perhaps as, if not more valid, than any other opinion in the world?
Mm,
And that is the crux of the issue.
yeah.
You may have umpteen regrets, and all of them might be related to you allowing other people to determine what should be good for you. So, taking that one step across the threshold could completely change your life. But you are the only one who can do that. No one can throw you across the threshold. Please feel free to continue.
Kris, the one thing you said recently, I did a little bit of a exercise, and as you were speaking, it felt powerful while I was doing it, but your explanation now is kind of clicking as to why. And um, I am somebody who is maybe doing one of those switches. I've been trained as a physician and doing a lot more of writing, and particularly writing about healing, which is representing a major shift. And one of the things recently I did was to write about what I would be doing if I did a career in that. You know, imagining yourself talking to crowds of people, or going to a school and reading to the children, and or you know, maybe giving seminars, and things like that. And so then it was it was very similar to the child doing those imaginative activities, imagining themselves being the vet or the this, and just allowing your imagination to go there and to write that down and catalog it. And there was something else that was really interesting that I think made the exercise more powerful. And the coach that had given it to me had said, and then imagine what it would feel like to be there. So imagine the scenario and then add in the feelings. And I think that added another layer to the process. And I was wondering if you could speak to that as well.
Indeed, it is significant to add the particular sensory mechanisms. Imagine what it would feel like once you are on the stage, or once you have a book, or what kind of emotions would come up. So all of these are very important because it emphasizes the direction of your intention. And when you do that, when you couple your imagination with your feelings and emotions, you send a very, very clear signal to the universe of what it is that you want in your life. And the universe begins the process of bringing this about. And by universe, we mean your inner self. It begins the process of aligning all the proper coordinates so that you can live that dream, so that you can actually experience just that very thing in three-dimensional terms as best as it can convey it. So the process of what you call law of attraction is involved here. The process of the law of vibration, the law of this, the law of that. These are all very fine and dandy. The main principal factors are the imagination, the feelings, and the emotions. These are the powerhouses that take that energy and start converting consciousness into three-dimensionality. So your lovely trio, the three musketeers of consciousness, are most important.
And a follow-up question, say you write this down, or you have this imaginative episode, is it best to revisit it, you know, or really focus on that, or to just kind of do that and just drop it and let it happen?
You can do that periodically. And the moment you sense if perhaps your old ingrained self-doubts creep in, stop and just clarify your intention and release it. And then you can revisit that later on. Perhaps the old ghosts of your doubts will not show up, or they may. And the moment you sense them, stop the process, because you do not want to engage that energy. You want the energy of your intention, not the energy of your fears of the past. And you are the only one who can determine that. It is not the fears of the past that will hobble you. It is your use of and concentration upon the fears of the past. Literally speaking, the past is nothing. What is important is now. What are you doing now? So you want to set up an intention, and at the same time of releasing that intention, you pull it back. So do not contradict yourselves. Do not hobble yourselves. Just allow yourself to freely engage with the universe.
And what if the fears don't come up? Would we just utilize our
Do the same
intuitions to
thing.
say, hey, okay, this is enough. I'm done with this for right now and move on to something else?
Indeed. And perhaps 5, 10 minutes at the most would be more than enough time at any given moment, because your human mind does tend to vacillate from one thing to another. And pretty soon you will be starting to think of dinner and perhaps going out and work. And you don't want those to interrupt your concentration. So just a little chunk of time, perhaps a few times a day at the most. And after a while, just completely drop it. Now you may begin to look for little hints, and you might even see them crop up. Little hints that tell you something is afoot. You might notice things like the digital alarm clock could say 11:11, or you suddenly come across all sorts of little coincidences. People that you thought of, have not seen for a while, suddenly begin showing up or communicating with you. Anything of an intuitive nature might be there shoring up your own intention and telling you, yes, the intuitive universe is working on this. Let us finish it for you. And it may come to you in a most unexpected way. And part of one of the great difficulties is that almost everyone expects that it will be done in this particular way, and it may not come that way. It will come, but it may come in a most surprising way, the most open-ended way possible. Does that make sense as well?
Yeah, I know when things are coming together for me, I see lots of butterflies and then children wearing butterfly t-shirts and people with butterfly tattoos. They'll just like all start showing up. They're like, oh, okay, this is happening, you know? So yeah, I
Indeed.
understand.
And if there are certain things you have noticed in the past, like you, it's butterflies. For someone else, it might be a specific kind of bird or a dog or whatever, flowers, little things that just capture you. Then know that someone, which means the inner universe, is looking out on your behalf and is working to bring this dream of yours to fruition. Does someone else have an inquiry? Lisa, Ellen, Alan, you are all too quiet.
Kris, what do we think about a short break and maybe move on to another episode?
Indeed.
All right,
Somebody have
thank
a
you,
dog?
Kris. Thanks for watching, and if you would like to leave a question for Kris, drop it in the comments below. Myself, Serge, or someone from the Kris team will be checking and may use them to drive the discussion, put them in future episodes. So if you'd like to interact with the Kris community, feel free. Put your questions below, and we'd love to hear from you, and see you again next time.